Screen?
Looks good.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sara Zein, and for this program, I worked on a project called Social Mobility and Meritocracy with my mentor, Dr. Taylor Phillips. So to start off, the research question was, how does social mobility affect people's beliefs in meritocracy? Social mobility is the movement of individuals either up or down the social hierarchy. People who are upwardly mobile have moved from a lower to a higher socioeconomic position, and people who have experienced downward mobility have moved from a higher to a lower socioeconomic position. We also examined our participants' expected social mobility, or what they anticipate their socioeconomic position to be in the future. However, for the concept of meritocracy, it's the belief in success based on elements of merit like hard work, ambition, goals, one's own education, and they're all factors that are under a person's control. The idea of meritocracy is very common in the American society, and some researchers attribute that to the American dream, or the belief that anyone, regardless of their social background, can achieve success, that society is an even playing field and upward mobility is attainable for everyone. And that might be why a lot of Americans tend to overestimate the extent to which they can move upward or down the social ladder. However, the concept of meritocracy might exclude some of the factors that are beyond a person's control and that can either hinder success, like being a first-generation student, structural inequalities that are associated with gender, religion, and race, and a person's marital status, and also factors that can aid one's success, like class privilege, family connections, family wealth, and parents' education. So the hypotheses for this study were that participants who experienced upward mobility or expect to experience it in the future might have positive attitudes towards meritocracy, and that participants who experience downward mobility or expect to experience it in the near future will have more negative attitudes towards meritocracy, and that the beliefs in meritocracy might vary across gender and race. Okay, for the methods, we had a total of 400 participants. 78% were of a medium socioeconomic status, 16% were of a low socioeconomic status, and 6% were of a high one. And the majority of the sample were either stable or upwardly mobile, and 16% were downwardly mobile. To measure social mobility, we used a subjective measure, which is the social ladder, where we asked participants to place themselves on the social ladder depending on where they see their current socioeconomic status is. And we also asked them to basically place themselves to where they see their socioeconomic position was 10 years ago. To measure expected future social mobility, we asked them to compare their current standard of living to how they think it might be in the future. And to measure meritocracy, we asked participants to rate on a scale from 1 to 4 the importance of the following meritocratic and non-meritocratic factors. Okay, for the result, participants who had experienced upward mobility tended to have higher beliefs in success based on merit than those who had experienced downward mobility. And participants who are of a high socioeconomic status and that might have been benefiting from class privilege exhibited a higher belief in meritocracy than those of a low or a medium socioeconomic status. However, the belief in the role of non-meritocratic elements like connections, family, wealth, and parents' education did not seem to be affected by either a person's current socioeconomic status or their mobility, so if they had moved upward or downward the social ladder. However, the difference could be seen across race. So people of color ranked the non-meritocratic factors as playing a higher role in success than our white participants. However, there was no difference in the meritocratic ideas between people of color and the white participants. And for expected future social mobility, or where the participants see that they might be socioeconomically in the future, it did not seem to affect people's current meritocratic and non-meritocratic beliefs. However, it should be noted that the majority of the sample had expected to be either upwardly mobile or to remain socioeconomically stable. So to wrap up, moving up the social hierarchy seemed to strengthen people's belief in hard work and in being self-made and basically being able to control success, benefiting from class privilege, like being from a high socioeconomic status, might correlate to having high meritocracy scores. And non-meritocratic elements like discrimination and connections were not affected by socioeconomic status or social mobility, but rather by race. And for the limitations, 48% of the sample were, as I said, socioeconomically stable, and the majority of the participants were white. And for future directions of research, many studies have shown that there's a difference in the perception of meritocracy and of the importance of connections in success between societies like America, for example, that are individualistic, and societies like specific Asian societies that are highly homogeneous and collectivistic. And so I'm currently running a study in my own country, which is also highly collectivistic, Lebanon, and I'm seeing how the participants, Lebanese participants, might basically perceive success differently and how they might see the importance of meritocratic and non-meritocratic factors in success. And thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, please ask. Thank you.
Great job. Really interesting talk. I want to open up first to any questions from the audience. Anybody would like to ask questions, you can use the raise hand function in Zoom. Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Sarah. So I wanted to hear more. I know that we had gotten to discuss this a little bit, but I wanted to hear more for myself and for the general audience about your expectations of what might come out of the Lebanese survey. So I know you described it as there could be cultural differences, but more specifically, what do you think those differences might be in this case?
Okay, so I did a primary analysis. Now, at first, I expected that Lebanese people might have lower scores on meritocracy and higher scores on non-meritocratic elements because we, like, as a society, we value connections a lot. However, in my primary analysis, the Lebanese participants had higher beliefs in meritocracy than the American participants. So almost all of the participants ranked the 3 meritocratic factors as very important. Which I didn't see in basically the first survey. And non-meritocratic factors, there weren't any significant differences between both of my samples. So that's very interesting, actually.
Other questions? Ooh, here's a question from the chat. Let me see if I can read it.
Yeah, please.
Why is this so hard to do? All right. Sorry, I'm a little rusty with my Zoom. All right. Here we go. I'm interested in the finding where people of color had more non-meritocratic beliefs than white individuals. Did you find any significant differences across racial groups? For example, one might predict that East Asian Americans have less or no meritocratic beliefs relative to Latina and Black individuals, given that Black and Latino groups have lower socioeconomic status than East Asians on average. This is from Nadia.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I did examine the differences in meritocracy across the groups of people of color, but there wasn't any significant difference. And also it's because like the 30% of the participants were people of color. So there wasn't as much variety between the categories of like race. But in general, there wasn't any significant difference, no. But I think if we had a bigger sample, then yes, we might find, maybe.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question that I'm trying to form in my head before I ask it, but we'll see how it comes out. So I wonder if there's an interaction between the race factors that you looked at and like I forgot how you operationalized it, but like whether people had experienced upward social mobility versus downward. Because I wonder if like maybe for racial and ethnic minorities who have experienced upward shifts in social class, that they'd think, oh, well, like I made it, so obviously these things don't play a role in like success. So yeah, did you look at that at all? Or can you
Yeah, I
speculate?
also looked at that. So I paired both variables, the variable of race and social mobility, and examined it against the other race. And there was also no significant difference. Maybe it's because I think it's a general ideology, like in society.
Very interesting. Oh, last question for me. Like I'm thinking about like the sample is either stable or upwardly mobile, and I'm wondering about what do you think if you have so that's maybe not surprising, but there are periods in the world where you know, people go on furloughs, or people, right, like or maybe there's stimulus checks, like in the States, right? Like during the pandemic, there's stimulus checks, so people's economic fortunes rise temporarily. Do you think this is something that moves as a function of those kinds of, I guess, you know, situational variances, or is this a broader ideology that's more difficult to shape? What do you think?
It might be both. So, for example, my country right now is experiencing an economic inflation about 200%. So most of the sample were downwardly mobile, and they have been downwardly mobile like recently, in the recent 3 years. And they had very similar results to the American sample. So it might be both. I'm not sure.
Oh, Taylor, follow up.
Yeah, I have one just to jump in, Michael, on your question. And again, I have the benefit of a little extra background that Sarah shared with me. But I also was wondering about, so we're kind of seeing this sample of what percent of people reported being upwardly mobile versus stable. But I remember, Sarah, you saying that there was an interesting phenomenon or anomaly in the data when we used when you used the bucketing measure of people's reports versus subtracting the ladders. So it leads me to question, in addition to Michael, kind of how might we think about this over time? How accurate were people in reporting their own stability or mobility?
Yeah, that's right. People weren't really accurate, because when I used the measure of the social ladder, basically I asked them to rank where they are currently and where they see them, or where they were in the past. And let's say, for example, so many people, according to the social ladder, seem to have moved upwards, and then in the subjective measure, they answered that they were stable. And then a lot of them seem to have moved downwards, even sometimes 3 steps. And in the measure, they said that they had moved upwards. So it just shows that it's very subjective, and the way that people perceive that they have either improved their socioeconomic status or went down the social ladder is also subjective. So
that's a great insight, I think, to conclude on. A really interesting project. Another thank you to Sara for sharing your work. An excellent job.
Thank you so much.
You know, thanks everybody for coming. We're going to break until 9:30, so we're going to try and have Carlos start right on time. So if you want to stick around, you can. You want to pop in and out, you can. I'll let you in. But it's really up to you. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for our next presentation.